So let's get started. This webinar this week is actually a pretty important one because it's about, let me just do one. It's about a topic that I think motivates quite a few people, and that's working in the best law firm you can and the biggest law firm you can. And in many respects, this Syringe, and there's all these fans in this video, but this is an important topic from the sense that a lot of people are trying to work in the biggest law firms they can, and they're trying to work in the most prestigious law firms they can. And a lot of what motivates young attorneys and even older attorneys is doing that. And so what I'm going to talk about today is the reasons why that can be a good career decision. For a lot of people, working in large law firms and the very prestigious law firms can be very taxing from an emotional standpoint because it's just so involving. It can be extremely stressful. It can take a toll on your health. And if you don't know how to handle it, it can be disastrous. But at the same time, there's definitely major benefits to doing so. And it will change you and make you a more competent person and all sorts of things if you commit to it. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to talk about really and quite a bit of depth, the reason why it's important to work in the best law firm you can and to practice law. Law firm attorneys are always many times thinking about giving up on law firm jobs. And a lot of them are ready to give up or trade down to smaller law firms. And it becomes something that becomes very, motivating to them. And in reality, I speak to attorneys all the time, and a good proportion of them, even the most successful ones, are always talking about doing something else or moving to a smaller firm or getting out of it, doing less stress and so forth. And so a lot of people are thinking the same thing you are. And definitely what you're considering doing is something that a lot of people may be interested in. Recently, I was working with a partner in a very well-known American law firm with a large book of business. And to my astonishment, he turned down several very good offers. Two were close to the mid seven figures, and he took a job in-house, paying a fraction of what he could in the law firm. And I speak with attorneys almost on a daily basis to take jobs right out of law school with giant law firms, and they have the intention many times of giving up and going in-house, or to smaller firms, or taking some sort of other job with the government or a public interest organization as quickly as they can after getting some experience. It's the same thing. It's with when you look at mid to senior level associates in many law firms, a lot of them don't want to stick with it. And I would estimate that a large proportion of people in very competitive large firms, and again, I don't know why it's broken down by sex here, but there is some truth to that. Something in the neighborhood of 80% of women and 60% of men, are probably more than that of men, I would say these days, want to work in different practice settings. Not too long ago, it was very interesting. I had an opening for a head of litigation at a small company in Louisiana. The position paid a couple $100,000 a year. I had partners in major firms in New York and other major cities competing for the same job. And despite the fact that in a few cases, it would involve meaning the person making about $2 million less per year than they were making, but they were actually interested in a position that paid that amount. They wanted to work in-house that badly. Just give me a second here. I'm having a little bit of issue. 1 second. Okay, here we go. And so obviously not everyone gives up. Large law firms keep going along, and the majority of attorneys do give up early, and in my opinion, there's really no reason to do so. I think for most people, sticking with it is actually a good idea. And if you don't stick with it, you're often going to be stunning your development as an attorney, your future income prospects and more, which I'm going to talk about today. And at the outset, and I'm telling you, and I think this actually strengthens my argument. I run businesses to help people get jobs in-house and the government and so forth, and small firms and solo practitioners. And I also place lots and lots of attorneys in very small and less prestigious firms, if that's what they're interested in. But at the same time, I don't think that there's anything wrong working in-house or in a less prestigious firm. But at the same time, I do think that my overriding conviction and belief is that most attorneys should take the best law firm job you can and avoid most in-house government, public interest, and other types of jobs if possible, because most often there's a giving up component to that and dropping out, which doesn't mean it's not something you don't have to do, but at the same time, I believe that it's very important if you can to work with the largest law firm you can or the best law firm you can for the longest period of time. I look at a lot of this in terms of dropping out. At all points in your career, there's going to be all ways and temptations to drop out. There's going to be there were temptations when you were in high school. I saw people drop out. When I was in college, I saw people drop out. When I was in law school, I saw people drop out, and I saw people drop out even after they graduated from law school and not even take jobs to law firms to begin with. Now, I'm not saying that dropping out is a bad thing for everybody. You should certainly not continue doing things that you're not good at. But I will tell you that when I was in high school and taking chemistry and other classes, which were very unenjoyable to me, I could have dropped out very easily because I did. And I think everyone comes up against circumstances and reasons in their careers and so forth that they can drop out at different points in time. And the idea is the longer you stick with something, the more rewards are, the fewer people are going to be, you're going to be competing with. One thing that's interesting to me, and I'm just going to say this as an aside, is it's actually much easier to get a job with a larger law firm and a good law firm after you've been out of school for a few years because so many people have dropped out and fewer people have specialized in different practice areas. People are dropping out all the time. Lots of attorneys may have dropped out of law firms. When I joined a big law firm, when I got out of my clerkship. And I think within the first 6 months, 20% of the class was gone. They dropped out and were doing other things. Lots of attorneys, like people drop out and they drop out for a lot of reasons. And when you're in a competitive environment, you're getting psyched out by other people. They'll psych you out by making you think you're doing a bad job. They'll psych you out by being mean to you when you're doing well and nice to you when you're doing poorly. There's so many people that can psych you out in your career. And in the more competitive environment you're in, many times more people may be trying to psych you out. So the game of actually being involved and staying in a large law firm is about having persistence and all sorts of things and not being afraid of criticism and taking criticism and growing from it and actually taking criticism about things that you may believe are impossible to extremely difficult to fix and then fixing them from there. I remember the first time when I was in my first year of law school, I was working in the Justice Department in Washington, D.C., and there were all these very smart Yale Law School graduates and Stanford and all the stuff in my department, but they were very smart. They'd been clerks and for circuit court judges and all this stuff. And the first time I turned an assignment in and had it marked up, I thought I couldn't believe how far out of the water I felt. I'd never, it was insane. Just everything that they could find wrong with what I'd done. But the point is that stuff, once you learn, then you get better and better, then things change. And most people don't need to get psyched out. What you need to understand is that as you get better and better feedback from people and things, the harder and harder they seem, the better you're going to be because you are going to learn. And if you're learning and you're around very good people, those people that are pushing you and criticizing you and are making you grow are going to change you and they're going to make you better. I'll tell you a quick story. This is actually this week. I had an attorney that used to work for me and he'd gone to a good law school, like a top 10 or 15 law school. He graduated. He was one of the top 5 students in his class. But when he graduated from law school, he didn't want to go to work for anyone. So he started his own practice and then he was not doing well. So he came to work for me and worked for me for 2 years as an attorney. And I trained him. And now he's one of the top, I would say probably one of the top 5 or 10 personal injury attorneys in Los Angeles. And he came and he said, I owe it all to me and all this kind of stuff, which isn't true. This guy would have done well anyway. But what I taught him to do was to be thorough and to look at things very closely and so forth, where he had never been trained to do that before when he was practicing law on his own. So when you're around good people, and all I was doing was teaching him at a surface level, the things that I learned in the few years I'd practiced law. So the closer you look and someone very smart picking up on that, who's independent, wants to have their own practice, that was helpful. But the point is that when you're around people that are good and you're around very good firms, it's going to make you into a better attorney. And when you're a better attorney, you're going to see things that other people don't, and it's going to make you a very effective person and an attorney in the long run. And so if you surround yourself with people that want to drop out and that are talking about doing all these other things, where does that lead? Where does dropping out lead? Does it lead to excellence and to the type of success you want, or does it lead somewhere else? I think at least until you've been doing this for a good length of time and you're at a point where you don't see yourself learning more, you don't see yourself getting better, the dropping out's insane. You don't drop out when you're in the pressure and cooker and learning. You drop out when you have control of the material, when you have control of the environment, when you understand everything, and you really are a good attorney, and you don't think there's any more you have to teach that people can teach you around you. And the thing that's so great about major law firms is that they have a lot to teach you, and there's people there that are very smart that have come up through the ranks that understand things. And so if you can stay in those environments, then you're going to do very well. And once you drop out of a law firm, by the way, and you go to work in house, or you take most types of positions in the government, probably not a U.S. attorney, but most types, or you do other things, most law firms don't want you back because they know that you're not going to commit to it. And it's very difficult to go back. So if you're in a good law firm right now and watching this, you really need to do whatever you can to stay with that law firm as long as you possibly can and learn. You certainly can drop out if it's not working for you at some point, but you need to realize that once you do drop out, you're making a decision with long range consequences that are going to limit you for the rest of your career. And limit you, it means that you're not going to be able to work in that environment again. If you drop out of high school, you're not going to be able to work in most types of jobs that require, when you won't be able to work in most types of jobs. If you drop out of college, it's the same thing. And if you drop out of law school, you're also going to be limited. So you need to realize that making the decision to leave any type of law firm, but especially the largest ones, are going to have long range consequences that may be good for you and they may be bad. But if you're becoming a better attorney in the process, then I don't know that it makes sense. So this is my advice, and it's not for everyone, but I think that most people tend to follow this advice. The first thing you should do is you should try to get a position with the most prestigious law firm you can. The second thing is you should try to stay employed with the best law firm you can, as long as you can, meaning you commit there, you do your best, you learn, and not drop out. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with moving to a better firm where you might be under more pressure, or to a different type of firm in a different part of the country and all sorts of things, but you definitely want to stick with it to the extent you can. And one of the things that I think is important to realize, and this is just a life lesson for you if you're watching this today, most people out there, they dabble. And what dabble means is they'll start something and stop it. They may be interested in learning tennis. And then as you start doing something, you get very good feedback. And then it becomes hard and you need to dig in. And then it takes years to be very good. So most people dabble in things. And if you're a dabbler, you may be a dabbler with your legal career. A lot of people will bounce around from job to job. And when things get tough, they'll try something else, or they'll try a different environment. And dabbling is a sign of running away, or of not confronting, or not growing. And so you shouldn't dabble. You should do your best to commit. If you have enough motivation to get into law school, to go to law school, to get a job after law school, to do all those sorts of things, and to the best job, and then to stick with it, you're going to do much better many times than if you drop out. There's so many attorneys. Anytime I'm out in public, I'll meet an attorney and they'll say something like, "Oh, I worked at this firm, I worked in that firm." If I ever start talking about the kind of work that I do for a living. But the thing is, most people they just have regrets. They have regrets about things that they may have done in the past. And I don't think it's a good idea to always have regrets. I think if you do something, that you want to make sure that you do the best you possibly can and stick with it. 1 second. Mouse today. It's the same thing I had last week. Give me 1 second. I apologize. Or give me 1 second. I'm going to do it. Ugh, hold on. I'm going to have to get some technical help here in 1 second. Okay, here we go. This will be better. Let me see here. Okay. All right. So the next thing is you want to continue working inside a law firm really as long as you possibly can. And when you're in there, you want to continue to surround yourself with the most successful people. And those people, the more successful the people you are working with, the more likely you are to rise to their level. And that just means when you're associating yourself with the most successful people, you'll do very well. So as an example, I used to work in college admissions for an elite college. When you see kids applying to colleges, a lot of these kids may look absolutely remarkable. So I was working on this. They do everything they possibly can to stand out like a successful, or they get the best grades they can. They do all sorts of extracurricular activities. And really, when you look at their backgrounds, if they may have all A's, have done all this, extracurricular and athletics and so forth, they look in every sense like the people that are going to be very successful when they get out in the world. But the thing is that the very best colleges, what they want is they don't want people that are just going to have good grades and test scores, that are not active outside of class and are leaders and look like they want people that look like they're going to do things outside of just succeed, just doing well in school. They want people that look like they have outside interests and are motivated by something greater than just their academic achievement. And honestly, the kids who have not given up, and let me just see here. Yeah, the kids who've not given up and are shining, look like future success is the grasp are the ones that they want. And in most cases, if you got a job in a really good firm, you may have looked to the firm like someone who was very strong and had very good abilities and so forth. And there was more to you, like you could be someone and done very well. And the thing is with colleges, though, and so forth, is that a lot of people give up on their way to great colleges. At some point, they stop trying and they give up. Many become burnout. Some skip school. They don't try. Others get discouraged for whatever reason or get involved in other things and stop trying. And they're not as involved. And some interested in romance and so forth and make that their priority. And for some people, nothing ever catches on. It's the same thing many times when they come out of very good background. Attorneys that go to like very good, and this is a stupid example, but there's some truth to it. An attorney that goes to Exeter, Andover, Collegiate, St. Paul's, for example, often go through this process when they're very young, where they're trying to stand out and look like they're more than just very good applicants. So if you want to go to one of these schools when you're young, the idea is that, let me just fix this here, one second, that you have to go through a lot of the same sorts of things where you're not just trying to look like a number, but you're trying to look like something. And when people go to these types of schools, many times they list them on their resumes for the rest of their lives. And you don't see the same thing with people from most schools. The qualities that the best colleges and prep schools are seeking are similar in many cases to what it takes to succeed in a really good firm. You need to be smart, you need to be extremely hardworking within your peers, and then you need to get out there and be seen as someone who can attract business and be a leader. So it needs to be about more than just being one dimensional, which would be just doing the work. It needs to be about a lot more. And that's what they're trying to develop. And that's what they want from you. And they need you to succeed. The way you may have looked if you went to some rarefied prep school when you were 13 years old is the way you need to look when you're trying to when you're trying to work in the best firms. The way people look when they go to Princeton, Yale, and some other sorts of, other types of schools when they're very young needs to look how you look compared to your peers when you're trying to work in a law firm right now. And you need to think in those kind of terms. What is it that's going to make you succeed and stand out? How can you be different? How can you be three-dimensional? How can you be at the very top of your game and have more depth to you than other people? And so that's really how it works. The people that work the hardest and get the best test scores and distinguish themselves the most are the ones that get into the best law schools. But the very, very best law schools, the ones that have a lot of applicants, are also looking for people that are coming out of the best colleges because they know that that sort of historical pattern of achievement that you have is likely to follow you to law school and out of law school. So you're likely to be successful because of the sorts of people you were associating with even before that. And the very best schools that have that option are screening not just for the smartest people, but for those that show those sorts of characteristics and the types of the types of people that could succeed in a major firm. Just fix this here. What that means is you need to have commitment for an extended period of time, meaning good grades and so forth to catch the attention of a top law school. You need to be very intelligent in terms of your testing. You need to have outside interest and accomplishment, provided you don't have the best numbers, that you can only distinguish yourself from top law schools with this. And most attorneys, not all, work very hard and are able to get in the best colleges and law schools and do the very best they can in these environments. And the reason people are trying to go and be part of these environments is really, and this is, I think, one of the most important points for you to understand. When you're competing to get into the best schools, you're obviously competing to get that pedigree and so forth. But really, the reason you're doing that is because you're surrounding yourself with people that are thinking about success and are thinking about achievement and so forth in the right way. And that's one of the reasons why it's important for you to be around the best people and in the best firms, because you're thinking about people that are thinking about things in a way that's different. It's not because there's anything that nothing is taught that's different in the best law schools or the best colleges. It's because you get to be around other people that were able to make the cut and be in those types of environments. And those sorts of people have something extra to them that you can learn from. And many people think that they're trying to go to the best schools because of the best teachers or the rank in the law school and so forth. But you're really trying to go to those environments because of the people that you get to be around and how motivated they are. It's the same thing why people use the biggest firm, certain firms. It's because of the people, and why you're competing to try to get into the best law firms is because of the people and the people you learn from. And this is what it's really all about. Someone that comes out of a certain school, the reason they're different is because, first of all, they got in there, but second of all, because presumably when they were there, they were associating with other people that were thinking about things at a very high level, and that rubbed off on them. The reasons that people don't talk about is typically you're trying to go to the best environments and get into the best schools and go to the best law firms because of who your peers will be. The better quality school you attended, the more likely it is you were around people that were smart, motivated, and understanding, and they had something to teach you. Think of, what you're going to learn if you walk around and associate with people at Yale Law School for 3 years, as opposed to what you would learn at a fourth-year law school and what those people would teach you. You're going to be around a different quality of peer. And so the more you spend time with those sorts of people, the more you'll be like them. I was very surprised. I went to a public law school, but I was from out of state, and I was very surprised that most of the out of state students in the school I was in all went to these great colleges. It didn't make a lot of sense because I thought law school was all about trying to bring the highest grade points and all that stuff in. But it's really when a law school has a lot of options, they try to bring in people that are the most motivated. But if your peers are all very competitive with each other and trying to get the best grades, excel in extracurricular activities and so forth, but you're likely to be like that as well. You tend to become like the people you associate with and spend time with, and you think about issues the way they do. So think about if you were working with a solo practitioner in a small town that was doing very auto accidents defense or something, and what the qualities you would learn from them as opposed to what you would learn with a major Los Angeles litigation firm with Supreme Court clerks and stuff running around. It's different. So the people you're around affect who you become. And that's one of the reasons that this whole game that you're playing with law firms and so forth is so important, and that's what I'm trying to teach you today about all this. The best law schools put the best people around each other, so those people rub off on each other. I attended like a boarding school. I was a day student there, but it was a boarding school. And when I stopped going to reunions a long time ago, but I did go to one not too long ago, a couple of years ago, but after this was written. But the thing is that when you go to these things with your competitive people, they're all comparing notes and success notes about what other people are doing. Everyone's very cognizant of whatever other people are doing. And then when you go to these things, everyone's talking about how successful they are. And it makes you believe that you need to be part of that type of club when you're around people like that. And those are your peers. If those weren't my peers, I probably wouldn't have had the expectations of the people that I was around be different. And if you're with someone that's a movie star, someone that's a bunch of doctors and lawyers and flash traders and hedge fund managers and so forth, that's rubbing off on you. And so other people compare their notes, and it sets their kind of thermometer about the type of person they should be and what they should do. And it makes you feel like you may need to work harder and be different. And there's a quick story. There's a guy, and it was interesting. I used to be very involved in the self-improvement industry. I don't know how that happened. I do know how it happened. A friend of mine, our mentor, was in the industry, and then he died. And then I met people through him. But at one point it was interesting. One of the more interesting meetings that I ever had, it was this guy that had become extremely wealthy running these real estate seminars, and then had, I don't know, retired, and then taken a couple of years and traveled the world and talked to all of the religious leaders and gurus and everything that would talk to him and met them. And after that time, he put together some kind of, self-improvement, like collection of DVDs or something. And it wasn't very well done. But I was very interested because he did seem like he had really earnestly put himself into this. And the conclusion that he had reached is that our lives really are just shaped by the environments and people we spend our time with. That was it. That was his whole conclusion. And it took me a while to figure it out. I remember I had to actually go out to a couple of lunches with some people that had also worked with him because he wasn't very articulate in terms of how he spoke about all the stuff that he learned and everything. But that was his conclusion. And I thought that was very interesting because the people that you're around really in your family and your are to determine who you become. How do you think two people in the same family could be president or you have Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton or how you have the Bushes and how does all that happen? Are these expectations when you're in a certain group? It's very interesting. So it's something to think about. And even to this day, I get emails about how great people are doing. People can tell me on LinkedIn. It's just I'm constantly reminded of people's successes and how well people are doing because of who my former peer group was. And it's like that depending on the type of law firm you join. So your whole game that you're playing here when you're trying to get into the best law firms and you're trying to get the best jobs, really what you're doing is you're surrounding yourself with people that worked in these great atmospheres. I was astonished. I got an email not too long ago from someone, and they'd worked at a firm that I'd worked at, Quinn Emanuel. And this guy, I don't know what he was doing. I think he was running a small law firm in some suburb of LA, but he had in his signature line of and this is a true story, of his email, class of such and such from Quinn Emanuel. And I was like, what the hell's that about? Meaning that, I mean, that's how proud he was of having been part of this group. And that's pretty extreme. But again, the people you're around will shape. And again, I've never seen anything like that before or since, but I thought that was very interesting. High achieving people will rub off on you and they'll motivate you to work hard or they'll make you a better person. They'll give you ways of thinking about things and shortcuts that most people don't take. And as far as I can tell, the main benefit of when you go to a best school is not necessarily what you learn. Sometimes the teachers are very good and are able to make you understand information that you normally wouldn't. So there's very good teachers out there, but it's really your peers, their standards, and what they set for each other as a group is what makes it special. And law firms are complex. The quality of the law firm you're at will really determine many times the quality of your peers and their standards. And the people that you work with are selling their reputation, but they're also selling the quality of their attorneys. And as a group, law firms will they have ways of approaching problems that are unique. And the very best law firms bring people in their fold and they screen with the same intensity that the best law schools and colleges and elite prep schools do. They're really looking for people that they believe are going to be good fits for their group. And the better the law firm, really the better the screening process and the sorts of people that end up there. There's some very good firms out there and the way they bring people in and the way they train them and advance them and think about issues is awesome. It's pretty cool. There's a difference between firms like Wachtell and Cravath and Sullivan and Cromwell from the majority of AmLaw firms. Each of those firms has different types of screening processes and types of people that they bring in. And a lot of the drama and stuff that you would see at most firms they just have ways of running their business that make them very good. But they often don't even hire laterals. So those firms put that up there because they don't want the thinking processes, expectations and ways of approaching work from other firms to inflect the flock of attorneys. They want people that are doing things a certain way. I would, argue the right way many times, but they don't want that to infect the flock of attorneys. So law firms do have a similar pecking order to the best colleges and law schools and prep schools. And it's based on the people they let in, the screening processes, the thinking processes that are picked up there. And different law firms are definitely, some are more prestigious than the other. The quality of people that you're surrounded by at one law firm is going to be much more likely to rub off on you at different law firms and some law firms and others. And it's important to understand there's the quality of people that you're around at the best law firms matters. And Sullivan and Cromwell is an extremely prestigious firm, and there's just different works, but it's the quality of people that they attract and hires matters, and it means something. And in most of the cases, a lot of people that are maybe employed at different firms can never get a job with some of these other firms. There's just different qualities of people that work at both firms. And I have nothing against Morgan Lewis. Morgan Lewis is an awesome law firm. There's nothing wrong with it. You have firms that are just a completely different level, just as you have athletes and so forth. But if you want to be surrounded by the smartest, most motivated people, then you typically will try to get jobs at certain firms. And that's what these brands stand for, because they teach you something that you might not get at a lot of other firms. And because you learn those thinking processes and ways of approaching things and the ways of problems and so forth, better things often will happen. You'll become a better attorney. You'll make better decisions with information, and you'll watch what your peers are doing, and they will do certain things, and that will help you as well. And so it just, I'm talking about my prep school. So my prep school, big deal. People may be doctors and hedge fund traders, but they're certainly not coming out of there and being, well, actually, around me with there, but most of them are not coming out of there and being the most important politicians and president of the United States and all that kind of stuff. And there are prep schools like that where people are coming out of doing that. So you learn different types of thinking processes depending on the people you set. And the thermometer of your life and your career is set by the people you're spending your time with. And it makes a big deal. It makes a big difference. And you're watching what they're doing, you're speaking with them, you're going through the process, and that's going to help you become more successful. And when you're interviewing and speaking with law firms, or you should always ask what happened to the person that came before you. You want to go to places where good things happen to people. It was interesting. Years ago, I was in my company, and I don't know, a couple people had left our company, and I was upset with them. And so I wanted to find fault and say something bad about what was happening with them. But in reality, and then I think it was my dad that said to me, he's like, you should be saying is that when people leave your company, great things happen to them. And that should be really what it's all about. And he was right. And now, so I look around the legal landscape and I see people that have, worked for me. And I realize that many of the most successful people are people that I train. And so that makes me very happy. So good things should happen to the people that work in the law firms that you're going to interview with. And you should ask what's happened to them, because that means that there's good people there and the stuff is rubbing off. And are there well-known people that in law and business and elsewhere? Are there those people that worked in your firm that you're interviewing with have a history of just going in-house or doing some things? What is the barometer that's set for the people that are working in your firm and so forth? And the quality of your peers is just hugely important, and it's going to rub off on you. And if you're around people and you learn habits about cutting corners, thinking negatively about your firm, being not committed to your firm, talking negatively, reading gossip and so forth, this is going to rub off on you and you're going to become like that. I have a funny story. I don't know that it's very funny, but I was telling the story in a podcast yesterday, and I was talking to the hiring partner of a very prestigious law firm. When I say very prestigious, I would say the prestige level is maybe top five in the country. And he said something to me that I thought was very interesting. I said, what is it? What is it that the people that have succeeded in your law firm, what is the number one category? And he said, you're not going to believe this, but we actually, people that haven't succeeded are the people that don't read above the law, which I was like, what the hell's that all about? Which I thought was very funny. Meaning the people, anybody, he said, no one's ever made partner here that reads above the law. And I was like, what the hell's that about? And I guess because they look at I can trace their internet. But I think, what he was saying, and I don't know how true that is, but what he was saying is he was saying that people that are looking at negative news and looking for the negatives and everything and involved in the negative, whatever negativity means and whatever that sort of stuff means, is something that's not meaning you surround yourself with good information, with good people and so forth. And that's what helps you. I highly doubt to what he said. He seemed to really believe it and said that they looked at the internet stuff. I don't know if that's true, and I don't think there's anything wrong with reading whatever you want to read. But I think the idea is that being, and maybe he meant habitually or something, I don't know. But I think the idea is that you want to put yourself around positive, upbeat stuff, and you want to think positively about your firm and the people and a certain way of thinking. And there's lots of smart people out there that go to bad schools and so forth and end up in prison. And I think very smart people out there from bad inner city schools and so forth and end up in prison and drug addicts and so forth and never go to college. And I think a lot of it has to do with the quality of the way they learn to think about things and the way they learn to think about the world. When I was in college, and this isn't a good story, but I think that one of my fraternity brothers flunked out of where I was at University of Chicago and then ended up drugs and eventually killing himself. And he was from a very small town in Oklahoma, and I think and had never really learned how to, when he got to that environment, was didn't have the skills to, and I saw that the same thing happen with some other people. And so I think the quality of people that you spend your time with a lot of times can, and I feel badly saying that, but the lesson I learned from that is that the quality of people that you learn to surround yourself with end up having a lot to do with how you think about the world. And it's just about the peers and so forth that you're surrounded by, and that can help you. And I love the brand Sullivan Cromwell. I'm nothing, but the point is that a firm like that has advantages over, and again, Goodwin Procter is an awesome firm. I'm nothing against it, but it's definitely something to think about in terms of the quality. I see this pattern over and over again. I see lots of attorneys that have gone to like very good prep schools and so forth, and they go to very good colleges, and then they go to good law school, and then they come out of many times a top law firm, or they get a good law firm job, and then they're there for more than a year or two. And even though they have all that stuff in their background, I think that they don't understand that the law firm also will shape them in the same way that they were so concerned about all these colleges, and we'll talk about, and schools and stuff for the rest of their lives, every chance they get. The law firms many times are something that also have a big, impact on you. The quality of person you work with, the better quality person you work with, the better attorney you become. Your thinking processes about life and career and so forth. We'll begin to monitor those people. You're going to pick up on those surroundings and ambitions and all that, and become much more successful, in my opinion. And when you go in-house, there's some very good in-house environments. But when you take a job with the government, if you open a solo practice or work in a firm that may be beneath your abilities, really what you're doing is you're often making a decision to surround yourself with people that may not be as motivated and have the same qualities that are going to put them on a path to long-term success. And many times with a law firm attorney, you have to not just impress the other attorneys in your firm, but you have to impress clients, and you have all these other people, and you have to try to keep the largest clients working for you. You have to be able to keep increasing your hourly rate, and then there's all sorts of controls inside the largest firms, and those controls are, they want the law firms want to have, make sure they're hiring the best people, they have the best public profiles and more. They're a continuation of the process that most attorneys have been following for their lives. They want to look as good as possible in all the areas in advance of the next stage. So the ball really is always moving higher and higher for attorneys and law firms, and law firms represent this. And the competitiveness is often much higher depending on the quality of firm you're at. And if your expectations are very high, then you're around people with high expectations. Then when you expect more from yourself, you end up becoming a much better attorney. So that's really, in my opinion, the reason that you should try to work at the best law firm you can as long as you can, because every day, month, and week, and or a year you're with them, all this stuff is rubbing off on you, and you're becoming better. And then your peers, you watch what they're doing and how they're succeeding and what's happening. And that becomes a norm for your life. It's interesting to me, if I live in, where I live in Los Angeles, it's a pressure cooker. Everyone's trying to do all this stuff and be successful on all these different levels. And it's literally, it's everywhere I go, I see it. But if I go to other areas of the country, it's not the same. So you have to, it's all around, it may be more so in New York for all I know. There are different parts of New York, but or less, more so in different parts of Texas. But it's the environment that you're in determines how you think about the world. And the best law firms will make you much better. And the other thing I would just remind you of is when you're in your 20s, you're very young, even in your 30s and 40s, I guess you're young too. But attorney in their 20s, and I say this every week, has 50 plus years of practice left. In 30s, 40 plus, and in the 40s, maybe 30 plus years. Attorneys practice for a very long time. And so when you're young, especially, you want to get surrounded by the very best people you can. Children, when children are young, they're learning from their parents and everything, and they're becoming a certain type of person. Even up until the age 5, a lot of times they said the whole personality is formed by that. But it's the same thing with your legal career. The people you're surrounding yourself with are the people that are going to be raising you and making the type of attorneys you can be. And if you want to be successful, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have tried to go to the best college and law school you can without trying to get the best law firm job you can. And the other thing that's nice about all this great law firm training that's available out there in the market is you can get it at any point in time. Like you can continually improve yourself and get into better and better firms. But I just don't understand why, if you're watching this, you may have been gone to college, done very well, and then gone to law school and done very well, and then you're a few years in this whole game and then suddenly drop out. I don't understand why people do that. I think the most important thing is to tough it out. And even partners oftentimes will make partner and then leave when they still have a lot to learn. There's stuff to learn at every level of your career. You can learn to, as a young partner, you're learning how to get business. And then as a more senior partner, you start learning how to run the law firm and all those skills. And the game keeps going and it's fun. And you really want to surround yourself with the best people. And universal observation for the most part, attorneys in the best firms often are the most motivated, success conscious, and do the best work than many counterparts. Other settings, the best clients expect the highest caliber work and standards, and putting yourself in an environment without high standards is really all it's going to do is result in you not reaching your full potential as an attorney. And your goal should be, in many cases, not all, to reach your full potential. The other thing is that, that I would just say, and this is if you're in a prestigious firm right now and thinking about leaving, or you're going to firm later, you really only get one shot. If you don't leave or join one, or if you leave, I'm sorry, a prestigious firm while you're there, it's very difficult to ever go back to one. Or if you don't join one as soon as you can, you'll often never have a chance. Now, people get into very prestigious law firms in all aspects of their career. I've seen people get out of law school, have literally spend years working in very small firms, and then suddenly be working at one of the top 3 or 4 law firms in the country. So it happens, and it can happen a lot because that's not the subject of what I'm talking about today, but that level of motivation and so forth is something that can happen to anyone. And if you're very motivated, you can certainly do that. For most people, especially if you're in major legal markets, New York, Los Angeles, and so forth, if you leave and go do something else, you're going to have a very difficult time getting back into a very prestigious firm. And law firms really do not want a lot to do, and they don't have to, with attorneys that don't know what they want to do with their careers, or are not committed to working in a law firm, or don't want to commit to the sort of quality or struggle for upward mobility of playing the law firm game that's required. If you approach a law firm and I'll think about it. I'll think about taking this job at this very prestigious law firm, or I may be interested in working at a firm like Latham and Watkins in the future. Why would a firm waste their time with you? And think about it. And that's why would you turn down an offer to go to a very good school? And that's literally applying to Harvard for college and telling the interviewer that you're not sure you're interested in completing college, or maybe you'll go for a year and see how it goes and so forth, because you're thinking about maybe becoming a street acrobat or something. It doesn't make any sense. But this is what people do. People actually will act like this many times when they have the opportunity to work for the most prestigious firms. And you have to realize that going to Harvard for college and a street acrobat, well, actually this was professional, but just means you're either committed to playing the game or you're not. And people, you have to realize that if you leave this, you're done. You can't go back. The way it is. So if you're not committed, it's going to show in everything you do. People that work in your law firm, you can tell when they're not committed, when they're not on. I can tell the same thing with people that work in my company. I can tell the second that commitment's gone. Not the second, but very quickly it starts coming through. And actions speak a lot louder than words. If an attorney doesn't work as a summer associate, they take jobs out of law school, not practicing law, they go in-house after a few years, or leave demanding law firms and so forth. They work in firms that aren't as demanding. They're just not playing the game. And again, there's nothing wrong with not working as a summer associate. You can get a job in a prestigious firm if you want. If you're not committed to it, it's very difficult. And you have to be committed, because there's a lot of people trying to play the same game. And you have to be very motivated to do that. So this is one thing I just want everyone to understand. Playing the law firm game and staying employed there is no different than getting getting the best school you can when you're younger. But the struggle to get ahead and do your best and all these things is simply training. And it's a warm up really for your job of working in the best law firm later on. None of this means that you've made it. It's basically you have the tools to possibly do well there. And all this sort of behavior that future trainees demonstrate in order to get into a college or law school is really no different than what you need to do to stay employed with a major law firm. And the reason that your college grades matter to law schools is because it shows your ability to buckle down, study hard, and impress others, and commit to something for an extended period of time. It's the same reason it matters to law firms, your law school grades. And the law firm is like getting the best law school. It's just you need to look like the best you can and like you're committed. Grades show commitment. Some for college, many people can get a great grade just by working hard. And it's not a question of smarts. And so it's a question of commitment. And law firms are looking for commitment. And the most prestigious firms pay the most. They have the highest profits, and everyone ranks themselves based on this information. So everything is a game. And it's always worked. And that's how people evaluate things. Those firms that I mentioned earlier, Cravath, Sullivan, Cromwell, Wachtell, for example, have always paid the most for their associates and been the most difficult to get jobs with. So the most competitive environments are where the most opportunity is in the short term and typically the long term. And those particular firms, for example, have always been the highest paid and the most difficult to get jobs with. And so law firms are under a lot of pressure to make money and to pay high associate salaries to attract the best associates and show high profits per partner. And it expels people that don't fit that mold. They just don't make it in those kind of environments. It's a pressure cooker, but it's just how it works. And lawyers, of course, compare themselves based on the quality of their peers and the quality of the firm they're likely to get a job with. When people ask questions on these calls every week, and they always say, I'm at a Vault 10 firm or I'm at a top 14 law school and so forth. And so people compare themselves and judge themselves based on the quality of their peers. Now, I don't know that's necessarily the healthiest thing to do, but at the same time, that's where the most important work is going. That's where the highest pay is going. That's where the best people are going. And that's where you're likely to learn the most. It's going to make you as successful as you can in the long run. And the profits per partner at a law firm is really the same thing as law school rankings. The best law schools have the highest LHCT scores on undergraduate grade point averages. And then the best colleges, the highest SAT scores and grade point averages. So people rank each other based on those numbers, and the best law firms is the same thing. It's the profits per partner. Again, I don't think it should be about money, but money is a sign of how effective that group is. And for the most part, and there's a lot of qualities that go into making a good lawyer, but for the most part, the better the law firm, the better the lawyer. And the best law firms work for the best clients, and the best clients have the highest expectations. And the larger the law firm, the larger the client, the higher the expectations the client's going to have for their own firm. That's just how it works. And if you work in a really good law firm, you're going to be working for attorneys that are going to have very high expectations, and that's going to rub off on you. And a lot of times attorneys don't realize that if you move down, for example, to a less prestigious firm, or in-house or for the government, that those expectations are not there. Like you can't look at most in-house legal departments and know what the product is. You don't know the quality of the people that are working there. You can't look at most government offices. You can look at some, definitely, but you can't look at most government offices and know that there's like a universal quality of type of person that works there. So if you walk away from the game of trying to work in the best law firms, what you're going to be seeing most times is you're going to be seeing that the quality of the firm is not necessarily going to be the same in the expectations. And because of that, you will be a different type of attorney. If you don't work as a summer associate or get your first job with a law firm, it may be difficult for you again to get a job with a top law firm. There's ways to do it. It's not even, I don't think it's that difficult if you know how to do it, which is basically, I don't want to close the door on people that are watching this that haven't worked at a top law firm or as a summer associate. You just basically need to be in the right practice area, in the right location, and keep trying and learning. And anybody can work in a top law firm. You just need to have what it takes. No matter where you went to law school, you can work in the right law firm. No matter how you did in law school, you can work in a top law firm, but you need to have business if you're later in your career, or you need to have something special. I speak with attorneys a lot, and I speak with people all the time that think that they've worked at a big law firm, or they've gone and done something after law school and gone to do public interest work or state government work. And then they think they can just skip on over to a top law firm. It just doesn't work that way. You need to basically try to get into a good law firm immediately and then stay there right after law school. And then you need to stay on the bus, and you can't look for excuses to get off the bus. You need to stay on there and you need to commit and then you need to not get psyched out when you're there. It's almost impossible. It happens, but in-house attorneys very rarely get jobs at prestigious law firms after they've gone in-house. Same thing with government attorneys, unless they're high-level government officials. Once you join a law firm, you really need to do your best. This is another reason why you want to work in a major law firm. And when you work in a major law firm, you're getting access to waterfalls of money. And I want to explain what that means, because that's very important. And the best law firms, the better the law firm, the more money there is coming into it. They have huge clients, and those clients trust their attorneys. They're proud to be representing them. The law firms are paying everyone high salaries. The staff, in many cases, and many large law firms make more money than attorneys and average size law firms. It's incredible, but they're writing, these large clients are writing giant checks to the law firm for their clients continuously. If you're a big law firm and you've tapped into the cash flow of General Motors, Samsung, or Boeing or something, that those clients can afford to have memos written about anything, to have basically to write checks on an ongoing basis. And this sort of cash flow is massive. Bills of $1 million or $2 million or $3 million a month are in this realm are not uncommon, and the companies don't even blink. What that enables for law firms to have the very best people there. It enables them to train people. It enables them to have attorneys have a lot of opportunities, and there's really nothing like it. You may be able to teach in a law school with a huge endowment or work in various in-house companies, but a law firm really is just not the same. A smaller law firm doesn't have access to those kind of clients that are able to write those sorts of checks indefinitely. A smaller law firm has to justify every one of its hours. It has to be careful. Their clients are asking for discounts and so forth. But the largest clients mean more money, more opportunity, have the ability to have only the best people working on things, the ability to do the most sophisticated work, to work on major matters, and to have just lots and lots of opportunities available. So that those access to waterfalls of money, just think about if you're working for an individual, and if you go to see an attorney and you need that attorney to do something for you, once that attorney starts telling you it's going to be more than, a few $1,000s, you're going to start getting a little bit nervous. And then say, well, don't spend more than 2,500 or whatever. But for a major company, that's just meaningless. And so that enables all sorts of training and the ability to become a much better attorney and to work on sophisticated matters, and also to look into things more. And that's a way of thinking about issues. In the largest law firms, they may have different departments for different aspects of an individual transaction. They may have people that are, they'll research every single point of law. I once worked in a giant law firm, and I was representing, I don't know that it matters at this point, but I was representing the Sullivan Bernai, who at that point in time, I don't know if he still is, was one of the richest men in the world. And he was sued for something stupid. But instead of just defending him, we went and, looked at the legislative record when the law was passed to see if it was even being applied properly. This type of thing and that level of depth of detail looking at issues, not the sort of thing that you can do in your average matter. So it's just the best attorneys, and when you have access to lots of money can, and that's what makes them so exceptional. A larger law firm, by the way, which I think I've already said, but allows you to develop your skills so they're more focused and more marketable. Attorneys in smaller firms are often not marketable because they haven't developed specialized skills. Larger law firms are charging higher billing rates. Their attorneys are expected to be much more specialized. Attorneys become very specialized in larger law firms. And the more specialized they are, the more they understand different aspects of things, and they can get better results faster and cheaper. Smaller law firms typically don't have the volume of work to be specialized. They just can look at things on the surface level. And then because of that, their attorneys often aren't as effective. They can be extremely effective. And if you have very highly developed skills, you're in your practice area, you're more marketable. If you are a generalist with the same sort of skills as everyone, it's much more harder. You're typically not as marketable. A patent attorney with very niche skills is much more marketable, more general skills. And same thing with corporate attorneys and other types of people. So in the larger the firm, the more likely you are to be a specialist, the more likely you are to have very niche skills. Those niche skills will make you stand out in the market because there's fewer people with your types of skills, and that will enable you to succeed more in the long run. And then the other thing that's very exciting, I think, about law firms, and especially all law firms, but large law firms as well, is that the whole model is made to push you towards a form of independence and growing up. They're pushing people who work there to become independent, or they can lose their jobs. They're basically saying to you, we're going to train you. We're going to give you lots of work for the next few years, but we expect you at some point to take what we're teaching you and go out into the market and develop a book of business and become independent. And then we will support you. So you support us with your work and stuff and short term, and then we will support you later with when you bring us clients and so forth. And it's no different from school pushing you to get good grades. So you'll get a good job or get into a top law school. The law firms are pushing their attorneys to get business that support the firm. They will train you when you're young. And then when you get older, they expect you to bring in business. And if you don't bring in business, then, and so they want you to become independent. And I like that. I think that there's a whole natural progression to it. And certain people decide they don't want to play the game, but other people do. And if a partner, once you become a partner, this is just an important kind of lesson. The tables turn. Then partners, by the way, with a lot of business have a lot of power within firms because the law firm makes, if the partner brings $10 million in business and the law firm pays them 2 million, then the partner can say, I could go to this firm and make 3.5. What can you give me? And then, so the law firm, that all of a sudden, once you have business and you're in a law firm, you have a lot of power. And that's something that's important for everyone to understand, is that being a partner in a law firm is actually a very cool thing, because if you're able to grow up, then the law firm all of a sudden basically works for you. And the people like associates and everyone's actually working for the partner. And the law firm is providing a service, which is a brand and HR, payroll and office space and all that stuff for the partner in exchange for all that. And if you're a partner with business, by the way, you can pretty much work anywhere you want. That's important to understand. Once you grow up under this model, if you have enough business, the law firms will interview you, and they will, if I have a partner and that partner, even just a few $1 million in business, most law firms will interview them, not all of them. Once you get up into even more than that, even $1 million in business will get you a lot of interviews. So just, that's the game. You pretty much, once you start getting business, you have control over your destiny in life. And what a great atmosphere that a major law firm is really pushing you in that direction. And you may ask yourself, how does a partner get business? It's really very similar to the sorts of questions you may have asked. People may have asked about you in the past. How did you get a 3.8? How did you manage to graduate with an A- average? How in the world did you get 170 on your LSET? How did you get off the wait list at Columbia Law School? And all these sorts of questions. How did you get this job? When you went to a third-year law school and you weren't even that great of a student? How did you get a job at a top law firm when you were in the top half of your class? How did they make partner without any business, despite not having the highest hours? And these are all questions, you could ask about. If I were to tell you how to get business, the idea is if you want something bad enough, you figure out how to get done. You figure out how to get it. It's really as simple as that. There's no other answer. You just figure out how to get it. And it's the same thing with business. But if you go to in-house with the government, and this is the big thing, and this is what I want you to understand. And really, if you understand anything of what I'm saying today, and anything, if the most powerful career advice I could ever give you is, if you go in-house in the government, you're all of a sudden going to be dependent on others, and you will lose control over your career in life. When people go in-house, companies go out of business all the time. The companies close down legal departments because they just decide that it's an expense they don't want. Companies take their legal departments and they hire a new general counsel, and that general counsel decides that she or he wants to hire their own person or own people underneath them, and they fire the whole legal department. Legal departments inside of companies get involved in conflicts. And I've seen major companies, like companies that are your brand names you've heard of, let go 50 people in their legal department because someone missed something and one of them could have, you see the craziest stuff. So in-house is very risky. Most in-house resumes that I see, and again, I'm not saying that in-house is bad for everybody, but most in-house resumes that I see, it's typically someone worked at a firm and then they go in-house, and then they're at that first in-house job for a year or two. And then they maybe move to another one, and there's a period of unemployment. And then there's some gaps and this and that. And it's just bouncing around I don't know, like a rubber ball for a while. And that's not good. If you go to the government, it's the same thing. You may experience some movement. The government is different. I mean, there's fewer layoffs in the government, but you may also lose control of your career in life and not have the ability necessarily to choose the places you work and control your destiny. So these are all things to think about. And your destiny will be controlled by the economy and others. Partners with books of business, especially if you have lots of clients and big clients, you're in control of your career. And isn't control and the ability to improve, and that to me is really one of the big things it's about, and something you should aspire to, because it can change your career. and your life and your self-esteem and your family's future and your future, you can a legal degree is a law license is something that can give you whatever you want. You can, if you want to, whatever it is you want, if you set your mind to it, you can do it. And that's the whole point. The point of going to law school and college and so forth, if you want to get into a big firm, is to put yourself in control. And the bigger the firm you're at, the more likely it is you're going to be able to bring in large clients and be in control of your future. That is my pitch for big firms. I've certainly talked about the reasons to work in large firms before or good firms, but I believe that most attorneys are better served if they try to work in the best firm they can, as long as they can. And your first choice really should always be to try to work in the best firm you can. If you're at a world class law firm, I recommend you do your best to stay there. Or if you want, maybe move to a better one if you think that's in your best interest. But for the most part, you should stay really as long as you can. And that will benefit you. People that do well. And if you're at a good law firm, consider moving to a better one if you can. The better firm you're at, many times the best opportunities you'll have, but you also need to measure that with looking like you're loyal and all sorts of things. I do think for most attorneys that in-house jobs can be dangerous. I don't know why this keeps doing this. But that's many boutique jobs or boutiques are not good, but a lot of them can be good. But you should avoid these many times as long as possible and only take them when your career can go no further in a law firm. And I understand that this is not what most people want to hear. I think that most people, there's lots of things that people are looking for. People are looking for comfort. They're looking for reassurance. They want all this sorts of stuff. But there's lots of reasons for me telling you this because I've been sitting where I sit for a long time. And I understand and I see what happens and what makes people happy in the long run. And honestly, most of the time, not all, but a good portion of the time, your best career is going to be with a law firm and being with the best law firm you can, and then playing the game according to the rules of that law firm. And if people are giving you different advice, like saying, oh, it's better to do this or better to do that, you should really be suspect. Many times these sorts of people have their own issues that are clouding the way you're thinking about things. But most of the time, not working in the best law firm you can is a mistake because you will often, not always, again, not even a huge percent of the time, more than 50% of the time you'll stop improving as an attorney. And you're often going to do more harm to your career prospects. And you're also going to often limit your ability to move laterally to other firms in the future and your potential income. And I really believe that if you were one of my candidates or regardless of how you try to get jobs, you should really do whatever it takes to try to get into the best law firm you can, even if it means trying to work in Qatar or North Dakota. It's important because it ends up having a reverberating effect on everything that happens to you in the long run. And the best law firm job possible really does make a big difference and can impact your career and life and self-esteem and long-term prospects and ever. And the important point is I really, if you're considering dropping out of this game, don't get psyched out. Just stay with it. You don't have to make up your mind if you're in your 20s or your 30s and you're considering dropping out, you're just getting started. And so I don't always think it's a good idea to drop out. Now, for some people, it honestly it is. But you have to ask yourself that. And if you do drop out, you're going to miss a lot of the stuff that you work for. Every time you get into any environment, whether it's in high school, college, law school, your first jobs, your second, there's people that will drop out. And a lot of times that the reason that it's important to stay with it is even if you're not the best right now, other people are going to psych themselves out and drop out. And the people that win in the long run are often the people that stick with it. And making sure that you're just committing to what you're doing makes a huge difference and will change your career and your life and your family's life and even generations of your family by doing that. So that's all I have. I'm going to take a quick break for a couple of minutes. And then when I come back, I will take as many questions as everyone has, either about this or any matters that you're thinking about with your career, especially a part of the week is taking questions. And I apologize for this Christmas shirt. It's a problem with there's a green screen behind me. So that's why it's coming up all weird. But I will talk to you guys in a few minutes.
This weekend?
Okay, first question. Yeah, and just any questions you guys have, I'm happy to answer. So this is the first one here. I haven't had a job since 2019 when I worked for the Office of Attorney General in New Jersey. I'm trying to return back to the legal world. I do have my GD. What advice can you give me during this transition period? I'm currently working as a realtor. Okay, the first thing is one of the things I would say is this is just something for just fun on the call, but realtors can do very well. So I don't know that especially in this environment, so I don't know that I would want to go back to, if you enjoy being a realtor, I think you can do very well financially as a realtor, and it actually can be a lot of fun. I'm not saying you should, of course, but I'm just amazed at how well some real estate agents can do in the business. But my advice would be if you were working in that position would be to apply to as many firms as you possibly can doing the work that you're doing. I have found and it's always been my belief, and I've done a lot of webinars and so forth on it, is that you're really a lot of applications on your own, especially the people that don't have openings, can be very effective. The problem is if you put yourself into competition with other people that are applying to firms with openings, the firms with openings are more likely to hire people that are coming directly from law firms or practicing law at the moment and not in a completely different profession. So anytime you go into another profession, which being a realtor is definitely another profession, what that does is that it makes it look like you don't want to practice law or you gave up or just don't like it. And frankly, being a realtor, it could be fun. I think it would be great meeting people and stuff. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but that's what's up to you. But my advice would be that you really should do what you can to apply to lots of places and preferably places probably without openings. And if you worked in the government before, I don't see any reason why you couldn't get any other type of government job as well, depending on why you left. You could work with the federal or state government. So I don't think you should have any problems. Does your advice apply equally to someone who's stuck out of big law for 10 years, doesn't expect to be a partner? Should that person try to stay in big law at a counsel position or go to a mid-law firm where partnership prospects may be better? Okay, partnership isn't easy. This is a good question, by the way. Thank you. Partnership is not necessarily, there's different ways of thinking about partnership. If you've been at a firm for 10 years, you understand and are at a competence level that's a very high competence level. So you're obviously very good at what you do and you have a lot of skills. The only thing that you need to change is your ability to use what to make to generate business and clients. And I say this to people every week. I remember when I was young, there was a partner of my firm, Bill Urquhart at Quinn Emanuel, and he always used to say that he was giving some presentation about how to get business. And he said that the biggest nerd in LA also had the most business. So there's no certain type of person that gets business. So you don't have to have any certain type of personality characteristics, or it's not like someone that's out there like shaking hands. And there's all sorts of different types of people that are able to bring the business. But depending on the firm you're with, if you could always get a counsel position in a major law firm, being counsel in certain law firms is just as prestigious as being a partner in other law firms. So especially if you're in a major law firm, I would recommend, no, I don't think that the partnership title really, comes with anything other than probably an expectation that you will be able to generate business. And if you don't feel comfortable generating business, there's different types of people in the world too, by the way. There's nothing wrong with being the type of person you want. There's people that are promoters that get out there and promote. There's people that are workers. There's people that are connectors. Everyone has different types of personalities. And so you don't have to be the type of personality that brings in business. You can do whatever you want. But my advice, especially for younger attorneys, is really to stick with law firms as long as you can. And if you want to be in a counsel position, that's good too. I know that for whatever reason, I never brought in business that have been counsel at very good firms for a long time. And I personally believe that those people are much happier and better off than they would have been had they gone in-house or gone to the government stuff. And I think that they get good work. They know what they're doing. They're respected. They get to use their mind. They're working with big clients. They're able to train people. There's all sorts of good things about that. So I do recommend, if you can, sticking with a law firm, even as a counsel. That would be my advice. And probably staying with a law firm you're at or moving to another law firm. What happens is there's a lot of big law firms out there where people all the time don't make partner. And if they don't make partner, they're given that option of making counsel or going to a smaller firm. You may actually be better off if you go to a mid-law firm, and your firm may refer business to you. There's a lot of attorneys that get referred all sorts of business from the firms that they've worked at in the past, or they're able to go to a firm and build something up. Just remember that if you do move, you're going to have a different set of responsibilities, and you may be required to bring in business, or they may just give you a partner title and not expect you to bring in a lot of stuff. But the odds of that happening are probably, okay, let's see questions here. Sorry, I'm just looking at the question. Okay. I worked at more than a few AmLaw 100 law firms focusing on patent prosecution and having developed strong practice skills and case records, but couldn't stay there for very long. Okay. I finally realized the same mistakes I've been making over so many years, all of which, by the way, can be characterized as not listening to the advice you've been given. Besides correcting those mistakes, what else could I do to get back in the game? Okay, well, this is actually a good question, and this is a good question for patent attorneys. So, patent law, there's an article that I wrote. It's called, Why Law Firms Have No Idea How to Hire Patent Attorneys, or something like that, which I would recommend reading. And patent attorneys it's a very kind of unique practice area, but most of the time, large law firms do not do patent prosecution because a lot of the work is fixed fee, and large law firms make money when they bill out people by the hour. So patent prosecutors, you have a lot of options of moving to different firms, bringing in business and all sorts of things, and even working in smaller law firms. So the biggest companies in the country, whether it's Amazon or Microsoft or Apple, they use very small law firms. I've been amazed. And sometimes they could be a law firm of 5 people that they have writing some of their patents. So a patent attorney, you don't need to necessarily worry so much about being associated with the largest law firms. You may make the most salaries with them, but not always. In terms of correcting your mistakes, I think that anybody that's on this call right now or webinar are watching this, and you really are learning a lot. And I think that exposing yourself to this kind of stuff is not easy. Like for myself, I'll just tell you, watching this sort of stuff, if anybody that's watching this right now, it would be hard for me because I'm exposed to this sort of stuff from the standpoint of being a good executive. And it's hard. It's hard when you learn about your weaknesses because it's okay. I got to do this. I got to do that. And it motivates you, but it's almost like most people will bury their heads under a pillow and not realize all this. So I would just commend anybody that's watching this and you for watching this, because it's not easy learning all this stuff. And it's not easy confronting the truth about, how you could fix things. But in terms of correcting those mistakes and getting back in the game, the biggest thing with patent attorneys is patent attorneys are expected many times not they're not expected necessarily they're not held to the same kind of standards many times because they're science people, and it's just different kind of than other sorts of things. So I don't know. I think that if you do try to go back to large law firms, there's such a demand, especially for people with hard science backgrounds, that I don't think you'll have many issues with that. And that's what I think I would say. Okay, so let's see. This next question is prestigious firms. Give me one second. I'm having a hard time. And that's not good. I just made another mistake here. Next question is prestigious firms only hire a limited number of people. Any advice or number 2 could get hired by prestigious firms. I think the whole point of what I was saying in this webinar is not just getting hired by the most prestigious firms. It's about getting hired by the best firm that you can. So you want to get training from the best firms and the best people that you possibly can. Doing what you can to expose yourself to the best training is really what I've been trying to refer to. Anything that you can do to surround yourself with the best people, and then the best firm, the better. If you are working with really good people right now, could you work with better people and so forth? So no, not everyone can get hired by the most prestigious firms, but you want to get hired by the best firms you possibly can. Okay. So here's a funny question. Can you be fired for being unhappy at work? Yes, you can be fired for being unhappy at work. Now, is that legal? I'm not an employment attorney, so I can't tell you that, but I do know that I have seen people before, I would say, being fired from an attorney job for being unhappy at work. But I've seen people in big firms that sometimes they may just walk into their office and just say, we don't think this is a good fit. Now, does it happen very often? No. But if you seem unhappy and dour and so forth, then yes, you can be fired. The next question is, can I refuse an exit interview? Yes, I don't see why you would have to necessarily do an exit interview. I don't, if you've already quit, you definitely could refuse an exit interview. So I don't think there's nothing to prevent you from, people definitely can lose the position during an exit interview. Now, There's a lot of questions about exit interviews. I don't know why there's so many of these today. The next one is, what should you not say in an exit interview? I would recommend not saying very negative things about the firm in your exit interview. The reason I would recommend doing that is because you may want to go back to that firm in the future. And if you want to go back, you can very quickly burn bridges and actually permanently burn bridges if you say bad things in your exit interview. The next question is, should you be truthful in an exit interview? Yes, but you don't want to burn bridges. So if you say very negative things, then that can also hurt you as well. So you need to be very careful there. And then sometimes people will be leaving because of different reasons. So you do need to be careful. I don't know if you were leaving your firm, what the reasons would be, but you should be very careful. The next question is, should you tell your boss you're thinking of leaving? And I would say maybe in a law firm. And that's actually a very good question. I like this question. And the answer to that question is, I would say no. I think if you're thinking of leaving a legal position, I think that you need to be very careful about saying anything to your boss about that. The reason is if you tell someone you're thinking of leaving, then they know that you will leave. So anytime someone has brought something like that up, bring something like that up, they pretty much know that you're going to leave. If you're thinking of it, then it means you will. There's a saying in saying that if you say you're going to leave, or you say you're thinking about leaving, then the odds are very good that they know that you will probably leave, and they will start thinking about replacing you and may start giving you other types of work and so forth. The other thing that people do is they say, "Oh, I'm really loyal." When people say things like that, those are often the people that are most likely to leave, because I don't know why that is, but if you say things like that, but if you tell your boss you're thinking of leaving, just keep in mind that no matter who you think you are, it's a very large market. Most people are replaceable. And you need to be able to, you need to realize that any type of time you give something, some indication like that, you're probably hurting yourself. Now, if you are going to leave, there's nothing wrong with telling your boss that, or if you're going to leave, but saying you're thinking about leaving is not a good idea, because you basically are creating a roadblock to you being there in the long run. Now, there are people that will threaten to leave. Anytime someone has ever threatened me to leave, they've always left, usually in very short order. The saying I was going to talk about a second ago is there was this guy in LA that was like this billionaire. I don't know who he was, but and no one knew who he was. And he kept this list of like 25 rules that he believed have made him a billionaire or something. And on one of those 25 rules was I was never ever rehire anyone. And what that means is the second someone leaves, they're going to leave again. Anytime I've ever rehired someone that's left, they've always left again. Whatever it was they were unhappy about the first time, they'll be unhappy about again. So you just need to be very careful about hiring people, but telling people you're thinking about leaving, because they will believe that you actually will leave in the future. Okay, what's the next one? What do you do when you hate your job but cannot afford to quit? If you hate your job and can't afford to quit, you need to look for another job, or you need to look for another profession or do something where you're more likely to be helpful. There's no reason to be unhappy and to continue to be in a position where you don't like your job and you're just very miserable. So if you are in that sort of position, you definitely don't want to, you don't want to stick around. Now, sometimes you can change aspects of your job and make yourself like it more. It may be the type of work you're doing. There may be some people that you're working with that you don't like. There's all sorts of reasons you might hate your job. But if you do hate your job and can't afford to quit, you probably want to put yourself in another type of situation. Wow, a lot of questions about exit interviews today. I guess they are saying that a lot of people have been quitting their jobs. That may have something to do with these. But what are the typical 5 questions asked in the interview? When you're taking an exit interview, typically what the company's trying to do, if it's a well-run company, or law firm, is they're trying to understand why you're leaving. They're trying to understand if there's any people in their firm that are creating tension and making people leave. They're trying to understand if the company's not competitive or the firm's not competitive with other people in the market. They're trying to understand what they can do better to improve things. And then, of course, they're trying to understand if they have any liability in the future, are you going to sue the firm or the company? So that's really the final thing, is one of the big things that they're looking for. You need to be very careful with that when you're when you're leaving and realize that's one of the things they're looking for. And if you don't bring up reasons you might be suing the firm, then they'll use that against you later if you do sue the firm. There is a little bit of a game going on. How do you tell your boss you're unhappy? If you're unhappy, you have to ask yourself, is that something that your boss can fix or not? And maybe there's reasons you're unhappy. Again, the problem with all this is if you're unhappy, most of the time they can find someone else to do your job, or they can realize the value that you offer if you offer a lot of value, and they can fix it. So you have to understand the reasons that you're unhappy. And the way to tell your boss you're unhappy is not to tell them you're unhappy, but ask if certain things can be fixed. And if there's certain things that can be fixed or not, then you want to try to see if they can. An example of a reason someone might be unhappy is having to work every weekend when they have a not being able, not getting the type of work that they're due. Someone goes to a firm and they're told they're going to do a certain type of work, and then there is none of that work. And so asking them if it's possible to fix that, not being given work there's just all sorts of reasons you could be unhappy. So if that's the case, and you need to be proactive and do what you can to try to fix it. But that would be the main thing. Okay. How do you quit a job on good terms? That's great. That's a great question. And I do believe to the extent people can, you should quit every job on good terms. You should try to quit your job when you're doing well. You should thank everybody and often be vague about not make an issue out of anything that the firm could have done differently for you, or things that you don't like about the atmosphere that you're working in, and make it mainly more about something else. And the better off you do with that, the better off you'll be. People that have worked for me in the past, I had one person leave on that. It was interesting. During a very stressful part of a litigation case, this girl quit her job with me, and I couldn't believe it. I was very upset. I was able to replace her like in a day or two, but I was still mad. But even when she went out, she stayed and worked very hard for the next couple of weeks, and then she wrote a really nice letter thanking me and stayed in touch. And you want to go out with people liking you, and you want people to be able to say good things about you in the future. And one of the things that people don't realize when they're younger many times is that you're working with right now are people that you're going to encounter in most cases throughout your career. So you want to encounter them on good terms and not bad terms. The better you could do with that, the better off you're going to be. So you definitely want to be careful. This is another good question. Can you get fired for telling your boss you're looking for another job? Yes, you can. And again, I don't know if that's legal or not. I'm not an employment attorney, but I've seen that happen, and very rarely, a couple times in my career. And it wouldn't be at a large firm or anything like that. It would be when you're working for someone that's a very small type of firm, where you're working for someone with a small ego or something. I guess it'd be a large or small ego that just takes everything very personally and blows it out of proportion. But if you tell someone you're looking for a job, all that's going to mean is they're going to believe that they need to replace you. But the other big thing about that is, once you do that, you do put yourself in a situation where you're going to need to, in most cases, you're going to need to be able to find a job fairly quickly. Because if you tell people you're looking for a job, they may say, okay, why don't you plan on leaving within the next month or two? Because they don't want you to be working there and unengaged. And they want people that are committed. The best law firms, by the way, they just don't want people around there that are dragging everyone down and so forth, and not working hard and not engaged, not doing the best work they can. And it's very easy not to do the best work you can if you're looking for other jobs. You just need to be very careful. Okay. How often do lawyers change jobs? It depends on the attorney. My advice would be to not change jobs unless you have to. I obviously make a living with people changing jobs, but I do believe that the longer you stick with the job, the better off you're going to be. And that is something that will help you quite a bit. If you're able to stick with the job long term, then people that stick with the jobs the long term are often the best hires. When I'm interviewing attorneys, for example, to work with me, I always look at the resume and how long the person stuck around, or the period, the upward mobility. So those are two big ways of analyzing the resume. But the most important thing is really how long they've been at their job. So if someone has been at a firm for a long time, typically what that means is that they're likely to commit wherever they go. And certain people commit and do well and learn the culture and get along with other people. Wherever they go, they're unhappy and not doing well. The longer your ability to stick around someplace can make. Well, I think that's about it for the questions. There's one other question here, which I don't No, is that important? It's how do you tell your law firm you're leaving? People do it in different ways. You can do it in person. You can do it via email. You can give a letter. You can do all sorts of things, but those are really the main ways. You often want to obviously volunteer to stick around as long as they need you. And then most firms are very understanding when people leave. Thank you everyone for being on this webinar today. I did enjoy this. I think this is obviously a very important topic that we covered today. And again, we'll be back next week. And if you guys have any questions next week, I'm also happy to answer them there. But I think everything we spoke about today obviously was very important and I hope everyone understands the reasons that it's so important to stick with your firms as long as you can. So thank you.